the minute I finish recording this little vlog or rant thing, I'll already be rewatching Onegai Twins, but I wanted to make this, regardless, to just ramble a little bit about something that I've long since formed an opinion on, and I don't think I would ever have the chance to really mention it again because it's sort of like a weird little one-off thing. Um, but Onegai Twins, right? Onegai Twins was released. Let's see, I don't know, I actually have the year off the top of my head. And let me type it in. Onegai Twins. I want to say like 2003, but I might be wrong. Okay, it was 2003. It came out the summer 2003 season, right there. And this was around the time when digital animation was first starting to come into fashion. And this is part of my whole obsession with the era, primarily focused on the early digital age. My favorite era is like a sort of like a little uh, like like a micro trend, or maybe perhaps of like a specific era where there was a lot of digital animation, anime produced but still aired in 4:3, and they were officially mastered in 4:3. Uh, Maji Polka is an example of that. Onegai Twins is another one. The Onegai Twins is much earlier, so it's a little bit more understandable why. But the problem with this is that a lot of these shows were later re-released on Blu-ray, and the new transfer has some problems. And just from like a general standpoint, I tend to prefer the DVD original mastering of these early digital anime. For example, with Onegai Twins, I have pulled up a comparison, which I'll probably link down in the bio if I do remember it. I'll bookmark this page so I do remember to link it in the YouTube video just so anyone can draw their own conclusions. And ultimately, it's up to your own personal preference, what you choose. And now that I'm looking at this comparison is actually a terrible comparison because, uh, like this picture, the aspect ratio is completely fucked because it's not 16:9 or whatever this is looking like. It's not 16:9, but it's definitely not standard def. I have the files here. This is what it looks like. It's 4:3. Let's shift I. We can see the native resolution there. Um, but the problem here is this is a comparison between the DVD, which I have here, encoded by Pat Jantes. You could find this pretty easily on Ya. And then if you click it, we compare it with the 8-bit Blu-ray. 8-bit was the person who encoded that there. This was the release I originally watched, 8-bits 720p Blu-ray release. And with the case of Onegai Twins, 1080p is not worth it. There's a couple of 1080p encodes floating around Yeah as well, but if you look at them, it's the type of show that doesn't necessarily warrant 1080p, especially like in the early digital era. Like, I'm not an expert on this, but I'm just talking about just with a couple years of anime torrenting and autism to go with that, that generally speaking, shows that were released, especially during the early digital era, uh, do not necessarily warrant 1080p because most of the time they're just upscaled. If they were not necessarily mastered at that resolution, I don't consider that resolution even really worth taking a look at. I don't like upscaling at all. When it comes to watching these types of shows, I would just rather watch it at the original resolution that it was produced in, even if it's a DVD. I am currently looking at this on a 1440p monitor, so it's not necessarily even a huge deal if it's 1080p or not, because I'm still going to be upscaling it. But I'm not really sure where I was going with that point. The point is that between the two right here, with Onegai Twins specifically, I personally prefer the DVD encode. You can kind of see the differences between these two. There's a little bit of lighting issues. Um, at least it's probably not going to come up on this video because I'm probably going to re-encode the video that I'm shooting right now into 480p and compress the shit out of it. So it's not necessarily even worth showing on camera. But like I said, you can draw the comparisons in the link below. Um, if you look specifically at the girl's hair right here, and where it sort of like meets with the clouds, uh, it's much more defined on the Blu-ray release, which is the second comparison shot. Uh, the colors feel a little bit more muted to me, whereas on the original one, it's a little bit more fuzzy, obviously, more muted on the Blu-ray. But I guess the point of this is, generally speaking, when it comes to a lot of these early digital animation uh, releases, I will always go for the DVD encode. That, like, between the two, when I was doing a comparison, I'm like, you know what, the Blu-ray actually looks a little bit better. Um, but there might also be sort of like a scan lines in video game argument to be had here. Like, if I my color on my camera just completely went different. Um, for example, when I'm looking at the clouds right here, it's a little bit more fuzzy. Where if I go to the second one, you can kind of see like the lines of the clouds itself. But on the DVD, it's a little bit uh, more smoothed out, I guess. It just kind of depends on your personal preference. Do you like scan lines? Do you like pixel art? And I guess it's kind of a similar argument here when it comes to this early digital animation. Do you prefer the original encoder or not? I personally prefer the original DVD mastering. I mean, the show was originally animated in standard def, at least from what I understand. I mean, I don't have the original source files with me right now, but I would assume that it was produced standard def, especially for like a lot of these smaller shows. I would assume that they were done so in a similar way. Uh, I mean, they were broadcast in standard def. They were mastered for DVD primarily. The only exceptions would be other shows like Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex, I believe released in '02, possibly '03 as well. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's a similar ballpark era. But that was, at least, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that was produced in HD, but it was also produced in widescreen, and it wasn't necessarily aired on television. From what I understand, it was more so like a cable exclusive, similar to like a high end HBO thing. So it's a different ball game here. Um, but regardless, I would say generally speaking, when it comes to these older shows, I go for the DVD always. It's a big pet peeve of mine when I see a lot of Blu-ray releases, especially like 1080p releases of shows that I know don't necessarily warrant 1080p at all. Like I said, uh, Onegai Twins is an example of that. There's a lot of shows that I do have in my collection that I explicitly went out of my way. Maybe not explicitly is the right word, but I just went out of my way to acquire the DVD encode of it because I know that there's no reason why you should have a Blu-ray version of it. The one exception is Kaiji. I don't have the DVD for Kaiji, but from what I understand, Kaiji was uh, usually it's just like a shoddy upscale most of the time when you put it on Blu-ray. It's not necessarily warranted. A lot of casual fans will be like, "Soy boy pointing at screen. Look at my show. It's in 1080p." And meanwhile, it's like the most shoddy, upscaled, smooth over. Like it looks like you rub Vaseline on the screen type of thing. And that's what a lot of people end up looking at, and that's what a bad encode would look like to me. And sometimes a lot of these, like for example, in my opinion, the Onegai Twins is not necessarily as bad as one of these like shoddy upscaled. Like recently, I watched S Cryed, and there was like no good releases for S Cryed. Uh, I ended up did watching the Blu-ray version for uh, a reason that was completely different. The Blu-ray version of S Cryed was better than the DVD because the DVD release I acquired was really crap. There was like really inconsistent. What was it like? It was inconsistent in including the OP and ending in each episode. Like a lot of the chapters were all fucked up. There was like three of the same different audio tracks in one episode. I think each episode had like two Japanese audio tracks for some reason. And it was the entire thing was completely screwed up. And that was gotten from a private tracker, mind you. So I was like, screw this encode. So I deleted it and then I acquired the Final 8 version of S Cryed. And it looked like crap, dude. It looked like crap. Because it was one of these like early sort of, I think it was digital. I couldn't even tell because that's how bad the mastering was. No fault of the encoder, but this is where the problem rears its ugly head. When you see a lot of these shows mastered in a resolution they might not necessarily have been intended to be viewed in, or uh, just didn't have the details for that. And sometimes, for example, with the DVD, you get some of that grain. You get some of that grain in there um, that just looks a little bit better. You're not going to have the cleanest lines, but I would rather have some little fuzzy lines right here than to have some really egregious smoothing uh, done over that makes everything look like crap. Like I said, pixel art versus scan lines. Choose your poison. Some people prefer one, some people prefer the other. You get the purists, and then you get the people who like just the most basic form of what the thing is. But regardless, that was a random little ramble. I'm sure there are people out there watching the video who are a little bit more invested into the encoding scene than I am. Like I said, most of this is just knowledge acquired through a lot of years watching anime, torrenting shit.